I guess that the question of, continuous professional development is important, and many organizations realize that it is, but, how does it actually get done? And when I talk about CPD, I'm not talking about some of the regulatory compliance training, for example, that the law requires. For example, anti-money laundering training. I'm not, or for example, occupational health and safety training that might be mandated by law. I want to also go a little bit beyond some of the technical and functional training, for example, that lawyers and accountants and medical professionals do, and talk about the other types of CPD, continuous professional development, to upskill your team. And the reason why I think this is important is because people do not just do occupational health and safety or compliance or specific technical training, but they also need a little bit more to move the business forward. Whether this is marketing or soft skills, how to manage, for example, or new concepts. Where do they actually come from? And that's kind of on one side of the coin. The other side of the coin is okay, we want to make sure that we do some of this stuff. So we're going to assign so-and-so the responsibility to bring somebody in, or maybe it's done via webinar once a month, for example. And that usually is that's usually a huge challenge. For example, let's find a mutual fund salesman to come in and to talk about financial planning, which is fine. You learn something, but the purpose from the mutual funds salesperson's perspective is to get new clients so that they can sell you mutual funds. Or, for example, let's get a personal trainer in that talks about fitness, but is kind of really selling their personal training services, or a life coach who talks about life coaching. But really what they're doing is fishing around for new life coaching clients. You can go through the list over and over and over and over and over. And then when you do that, yes, tick the box. You've got somebody in, people are learning things, right? You're not paying the people, so guess what? They've got to make their money somehow, and that's not usually good. But the challenge that we really need to deal with here is, how do we actually use CPD to accomplish two very, very different goals? Number one is the short term. Let's teach people something very specific. And number two, how do we imbue in them a common aligned message that grows over time? And that's when the challenge is, when you actually have different people every single month, for example, doing this, who are not connected with the organization or the strategy or anything, because they don't understand how to connect their particular topic to your organization's strategy and priorities, right? So people start to say, well, what's the relevance of this to me? And the managers, frankly, will say the same thing. Why should I take my people off their job for an hour just so they can learn about something that's not going to actually help them with their job? So dealing with the short term and the long term at the same time is something that's actually quite important. Some of the other ideas, who has the time to organize it? What's the underlying message we talked about? How is it relevant? How is it reinforced? What impact is it making? Right? Sometimes, the decision to invest in CPD is an important one, but those very, very basic questions aren't explored. So why bother making the investment unless you know that there's going to be something coming out the other end of it?